Hey everyone, today we're going to talk about what the Great Depression was like for your average everyday American. And as you might expect, the Great Depression was a pretty rough time for almost everyone. Across the country, people lost their jobs, were evicted from their houses, were forced to live on the street, or if they were lucky enough to afford a car, maybe in their car, and then maybe even in something called shanty towns, which are makeshift towns that were built out of scrap metal and scrap wood. And so everywhere you would walk, you would go, you would see plenty of people begging for food, money, or a place to stay. And you can see, based on this graph right here, just how bad the unemployment rate was during the Great Depression. In 1929, you'll see that the stock market crashed. Unemployment wasn't very high back then because remember it had just started, but shortly after the stock market crash and that Great Depression really started, you see that the unemployment rate is going to skyrocket. It actually will not be any higher than it is than during this time. This is the time in American history where the unemployment rate has been the highest. And as I said previously, the Great Depression isn't really going to end until World War II. And you see back in 1945, there's a sharp decrease in the unemployment rate. But here's a picture of what I was talking about as far as shanty towns were concerned. These were makeshift towns that were built in large open lots of land, maybe parks, and they were built out of scrap metal, scrap wood, and just little one-bedroom huts that people would live in if they got evicted from their houses. And here are some of the soup lines that people would wait in for food. Now, you notice something very, or you should notice at least, hopefully, something very odd about this picture. And hopefully what you noticed is that when you think of quote-unquote poor people or people who are in soup lines and bread lines, you don't expect people to be wearing suits and ties to go get free food. Now, this can mean one of two things. Either one, it reinforces the fact that everyone was affected by the Great Depression, even the rich in some cases, but probably more likely what's happening here is that people still want to feel a sense of pride when they go ask for free food. They don't want to be seen as now poor or underprivileged. So in order to keep that sense of pride, they will go ask for food in the soup line wearing nice clothes. And here's what also I had talked about. Again, you see people waiting in line for bread and soup. They would bring their own cups or things to go have filled. Remember, if you were lucky enough to own a car, in that lower left-hand corner you see individuals living out of their automobile. And that was just in the cities. The farmers, again, are also going to have it pretty bad. Remember, we've always talked about the farmers always get the short end of the stick as far as things are concerned. They are going to not only be poor like everyone in the cities, but they can't even grow crops to help them get out of depression because of something called the Dust Bowl. Now, what caused this Dust Bowl is in the Midwest, that land had been over-farmed, so the soil wasn't strong enough anymore to grow crops, and it was sucked clean of its nutrients. So when the winds and storms would get pretty bad, all of the soil would be thrown up into the air, and you would have these black blizzards because of these poor weather conditions. And the Dust Bowl is what we're talking about right there, towards the middle of the U.S. and extending south towards Texas. And here are some pictures of those black blizzards that would occur in the Dust Bowl. Of course, again, you can't farm in this kind of weather. If all the soil is constantly being picked up by windstorms, there's no way you're going to be able to grow any crops. You can see just how big they are. Now, funny thing about this is, if you look at the scale of this picture, um, the door looks pretty tiny. You think that this is a pretty small house, when in fact, the real issue was that the dust came up so high that it covered most of the front of the house. So these people, in actuality, might not even been able to get into their house because all the dust and soil was blocking the door. Here's some more pictures of dust storms. So, in order to take people's mind off of all the depression and sad things that are going on with the economy and life in general, the government actually commissions movie studios to make movies so that it can get people's mind off of the depression. So it was a way to give people hope and take their mind off things for a while. And some of the real famous movies at the time were The Wizard of Oz, Gone with the Wind, and Of Mice and Men. All are based off of popular books of the same name. Remember, radio was also one of the big things that people did for entertainment. It would also be where the president would frequently come on and reassure people that things were all right. And remember, I did say that some of the shows that people would watch would be performed on the radio. One interesting thing about the radio happened with Orson Welles when he read the book War of the Worlds. People actually thought that Martians were invading the United States, not knowing that he was just reading from a book. So that was kind of interesting about how people got a little scared about that. And I'll mention briefly, as far as literature is concerned, one of the most famous novels at the time was another piece of work by John Steinbeck. He also did Of Mice and Men that we just talked about. But he also was going to write a book about sharecroppers moving from the Dust Bowl to California for a better life, called The Grapes of Wrath.
So, any questions, feel free to bring them with you to class tomorrow. See you then.